Well, good morning, everyone. I'm happy to be here. Nice map. You saw in the middle of the map of India there, the wheel of Dharma, chakra, right? Which is a Buddhist symbol found in Sarnath, where the Buddha gave his first talks, and which was 2,500 years ago, more or less. So I'm faced with a very difficult task this morning, which does that mean anything? It just beat.
Yeah, you just turned the camera off.
Oh. I don't mind being on camera. Okay. So I understand I have 15 to 20 minutes to talk about India, which must be impossible, right? Especially a pilgrimage to India, because I want to start back at the very beginning of my pilgrimage, which was when I was in fourth grade. I was 9 years old, and I was reading my big brother's Boy Scout handbook. And I discovered that in the Boy Scouts you can get a medal for fulfilling your religious obligations. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And of course, there was a medal for Protestants and one for Catholics and for Jews. Right? I thought, oh, okay, that all makes sense. But then there was also a medal for Hindus, for Buddhists, and for Muslims. This was 1960 in the Boy Scout handbook in the United States. And I thought, oh, that's really interesting that the Boy Scouts of America recognize and approve all these different religions. There must be something worthwhile about them. So I determined to find out for myself what there was about these different religions. And so I started reading and going to the library and watching travelogues on TV. You know, I was fascinated by India and about all these other religions. Of course, I had grown up in the Lutheran church. My mother took us to church every Sunday. And I think perhaps the Sunday school teaching was not very skillful. I'm not sure it made sense to me when I was 9 years old. So I wanted to see for myself, right? And started reading and studying and found all sorts of wonderful books. The Way of Zen by Alan Watts. I found a translation of the Upanishads, which opened my eyes and heart, perhaps, to a different way of seeing things. And then, as a young man, I had many experiences in New York City, which kind of opened my mind, one of which was reading Be Here Now by the former Richard Alpert, who may be familiar with some of you. I don't know. You can raise your hand if you know who Richard Alpert was, and maybe have read the book Be Here Now. I just absorbed it. I soaked in it for quite a while. And of course, at that time, 1972, 73, there were lots of young people going to India and discovering things for themselves. I thought that would be wonderful, but I was having a wonderful time in New York City, so there was plenty of things to investigate there, including a little storefront ashram on the Lower East Side that was run by a direct devotee of an Indian saint named Ramana Maharshi. Right? And so I was out for a walk one evening, and I walked by this storefront ashram, and I heard chanting coming from inside. It was quite wonderful chanting. Of course, it was in a language I didn't understand and knew very little about, but it was quite wonderful. And there was a picture of Ramana in the window, and I stood there listening to the chanting and looking at this picture, and after a while it seemed like I couldn't tell if I was looking at the picture or the picture was looking at me. It was just very compelling. So the next night I went in and sat with the group and meditated for the first time. And I said to myself, someday, perhaps I'll be able to go to Ramana's ashram in South India. So I put that notion away. The other thing that happened, of course, is that I was able to actually see Ram Dass, Richard Alpert, at a talk in New York City. Must have been 1972, I believe. It was quite wonderful. And what I remember about it is that we spent the last, I don't remember much about the talk, except the last 20 minutes was spent chanting something called the Heart Sutra. There's a mantra in the Heart Sutra that it's actually a Buddhist chant. And it goes like this: Gate, gate, paragate, parasamgate, bodhi svaha. Gate, gate, paragate, bodhi svaha. And it means gone, gone beyond, gone altogether beyond, all hail. Oh, what a great awakening. So we chanted that for 15 or 20 minutes, just over and over and over. I was very impressed. They had no idea what it meant, right? And so I wandering around New York, I found a little book in Weiser's bookstore on the translation of the Heart Sutra with a commentary. And for years, that was my bedside reading. I didn't understand it, but I wanted to, right? And as it happens in life, years went by, and I found myself getting married and having a family. I had 3 children, and moved back to Michigan from New York, and I won't say I forgot about things, but it was sort of in the back of my mind, you know, that maybe someday I could go. And then, as it turns out, when I was 65, conditions were auspicious. I had a little bit of extra money, and I was retired and had free time. And I thought, maybe I could go to India. So I started investigating it. It's a pilgrimage. To go on pilgrimage is to go on a journey for spiritual reasons. You know, not for material reasons, not for business, not even for tourism, right? You're not going to see things per se. You're going to experience something that might change you in some way, connect you, right? And pilgrimage is a tradition in India. Millions and millions of people go on pilgrimage every year to holy places. They call them tirthas, right? Which means a crossing point, right? Maybe a ford across a river. A way to get from one side to the other, right? And they say at a tirtha, the divine comes down into the world. It's a crossing place where something happens, right? And a friend of mine, who I call Al the geographer, was talking about, I've known him for 40 years now, but we were talking one day and he said that he was he was a geographer and he had never been anywhere. He thought he wanted to rectify that situation, and he wanted to go on a journey somewhere. I said, well, where are you thinking about going? He said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, if I was going to go somewhere, I would try to go to the source of the Ganges River in India. And he said, oh, well, that's an interesting idea. Let's do that. So he and I made a plan to go to the source of the Ganges River in India, which is way up in the mountains. You know, the source is, actually there's 4 rivers that are the sources of the Ganges, tributaries that come out of glaciers way up in the Himalayas, right? So we made this plan to go to one of the sources, the main sources. But our plan was unsuccessful. We bought tickets to India and passports and visas and all the rigmarole, but there was a great flood that year up in the mountains and in Delhi, and it was impossible to travel. So we discovered this at the last minute. I checked we had our tickets and everything. We were going to leave on Wednesday. I checked the weather in India on Monday and discovered that there had been this horrible flood. And we decided not, at the last minute, not to go. So I think a couple of years went by and the conditions were ripe again. And I had done some more investigation. I was planning a trip to India. And an American man who had become a Hindu Swami, which is like an ordained monk in a traditional lineage in India, was on a walking pilgrimage across the United States. He was emulating a woman named Peace Pilgrim, who some of you might have heard of. It's an American woman who walked 25,000 miles on foot across the United States and Canada as a pilgrimage for peace. So this Swami was emulating Peace Pilgrim and happened to be walking into Marysville, Michigan, which is just south of Port Huron, where I was living, right? The Swami is staying at a friend's house. I thought, well, that's interesting. So I went to see the Swami. We had a little meeting, a little satsang, a gathering. And after the gathering, I said that I was planning a trip to India. Was there anyone I should go see? And he said, well, you could go see my teachers, right? I said, oh, where are they? He said, well, they're in Haridwar, which is a holy city to the Hindus on the Ganges, on the Ganga, as it comes down out of the mountains and first enters the plains of India. And then his other main teacher, whose name was Premananda, which means Swami loved bliss. Isn't that great? They were students of Shivananda, the bliss of Shivananda. Had an ashram on the Bhagirati River, which is almost 50 kilometers from the source of the Ganges. He says, well, you could go there. And I thought, okay, I'll do that. So I went to India with these destinations in mind, and I had in the back of my mind a couple of things. One, when I was planning my trip with Al, the geographer, I wrote down in a little notebook the address of the ashram where Ramdas, Richard Alpert, met his guru in North India in a place called Kanchi. And I wrote down the address, and I thought, well, if I get a chance, maybe I can go there. So I had these kind of destinations in mind, and then I forgot all about Kanchi. I forgot all about going there. And then I arrived in India with, again, much difficulties, and my plane was delayed. I had to be rerouted a couple of times. The plane from London had engine trouble and turned around and went back to London. It was just difficult to get to India. And I had some difficulty with unscrupulous taxi drivers in Delhi. In fact, I got kidnapped. But that's a whole other story. I did wind up in Haridwar, where Swami Ramaswarupananda had a place, and I was going to meet him. And I wasn't quite sure where I was exactly. I was in a hotel room, and I tried to make a phone call, and I didn't know how to make a phone call in India. There's too many code numbers and things. So I went out and I found a way to make a phone call. I called the Swami. He said, where are you? And I said, well, I don't know exactly. I'm in a hotel room in Haridwar. He said, well, you weren't supposed to be here until Monday. I said, well, I came early. Because I got kidnapped by this crazy cab driver. And so I looked at the key to the hotel room and I said, well, it says it's the Hotel Krishna. I said, it's around the corner from the train station in Haridwar. He says, well, go back and wait in the hotel and I'll pick you up. So a half hour later, there was a knock on the door and this little man in orange robes opened the door and said, are you Sam Ewalt? And I said, yes, I am. He said, well, can I use your bathroom? So I said, sure, of course. So he had a car and a driver, and he took me to his place in Haridwar, which is outside of the city a bit on the river. And it was just this wonderful introduction to India, because I had a guide. And after the second or third day, he said, well, we're going to the school in Rishikesh tomorrow. Do you want to come with us? And I said, yeah, sure. So the next day we went to this school, and it was the end of the semester assembly, right? So they had erected a pavilion with bamboo poles lashed together with fabric covering the top of it to make some shade. And there were 500 or 600 red plastic chairs under the canopy, filled with all of the parents of the children at the school. And this is my third day in India, and I'm being treated as an honored guest. I'm so surprised. I'm sitting between the Swami, who's the guru for the school, and the school's headmaster. And they're giving me flowers, and it's just, the whole thing is amazing. And then we watch this assembly, and the kids, mostly, I guess middle school kids, and some younger, were singing and dancing, and they had skits, and girls were dancing with clay pots stacked up on their heads. I mean, it was just amazing, one thing after another. So after a while, the Swami tapped me on the shoulder, and he says, well, we're going to have to leave soon, but they will be expecting us to say a few words. You go first. My third day in India, I have to stand up in front of this assembly of 500, 600, 700 Indian parents and give a little speech. I don't know, what am I going to say? And I apologized for not being able to speak Hindi. And I said, but I'll have to speak in English, but I will speak from the heart. I put my hand on my heart. And I said, I have 3 grown children, and I've been to many school assemblies over the years. And I can tell you quite truthfully that I have never seen anything as wonderful as this. And one of the head teacher was standing over at a podium, and she translated that into Hindi so all the parents could understand it. So I looked out, and everyone is smiling and happy, right? And I sat down. So, how much time? How am I doing for time?
Wrap it up.
Wrap it up. Whoa. Well.
Tell us about Ram Dass.
Well, I took a train ride across the north of India from Haridwar to where the railway ends before the foothills of the Himalayas. And there's a town called Almora that I wanted to go to. And I had forgotten all about Kanchi. But I got a taxi, very nice taxi. It was decorated with marigolds. Right? So, and we're on this taxi, and we try, India is just amazing. It's chaotic and difficult, and I was never quite sure where I was, but we pulled up after a couple of hours to have tea at this roadside restaurant, and the driver pointed over, there was a bridge and across the river, and he said, this is Kanchi. This is where Ram Dass met his guru. right? So I was taken there, right? Not by any intention of my own, but as it happens, I was delivered there, right? And I just felt a strong connection to Ram Dass's guru, Baba Neem Karoli. And I could tell lots of stories about that, but I think I don't have any more time. Thank you. Thank you for listening. One last thing, right? When I went to India, I had a mantra that I sang to myself as I was, when I didn't know what I was doing, which was quite often, right? And it was from the verse, the chorus of a song by my friend Joe Riley, who's a songwriter and a Dharma teacher now. But the verse is this: oh, how free it is to be wishless, without a sign, an empty mind. Oh, how free it is to be wishless, without a sign, an empty mind. So if you go on pilgrimage with an empty mind, with an open mind, right, with an intention to discover, you may find things. Thank you.